There you are. I knew you would be here. I knew you would click on this video because you're a curious person. And I was using one of the simple storytelling techniques that you should be using in all of your work too. I created that curiosity. I already knew you were going to be a curious person, but I just poked it and let you create questions that you needed to answer by clicking on this video. So in my case, I used the thumbnail and the title of the video, but depending on what medium you work in, there's hundreds or thousands of ways you can do this. The main thing about creating curiosity is you don't need to ask the question. You can, but you don't need to ask or identify what question it is you want the audience to ask. You want them to create the questions in their minds and actually care about the answers. So for this example, with my thumbnail and the title, I tried to make it look, as if this wasn't necessarily supposed to go public, or it was supposed to go public, but nobody's supposed to see it because maybe I'm doing something in the background or testing something new. And I don't want you to see it yet because it's not the finished product. So you want to know what that is. What exactly is going on here? Why did this show up in my feed? Right? This is a test video, clearly. It doesn't have the same thumbnails as normal. The title's different than normal. Everything's formatted weird. Why is this here? Those questions that you're asking are exactly why I did it that way. So those questions that you are asking yourself are what is actually piquing your curiosity. And then once you start asking those questions, your mind naturally wants to find the answers. So you click on the video. So one easy way to do this, to spark curiosity in your audience, is to give little clues of what may happen. You may notice in shows you watch or books you read, a lot of things like to start out with something really intriguing. It could be a lot of action or something mysterious happening, or in some cases, they even start the show or the book at the end chronologically. The reason they do this is because you're thrown into this situation that you don't necessarily understand. You like what you see, you like what you read. It's exciting, it's intense, it's scary, whatever the case is. But you don't really understand how they got there. And so then when they tell the story of how those events eventually happen, you're invested. You want to know how this happened. How did that person get that item, right? Why is everybody here in the middle of the desert? How did we get on this planet where the aliens are now attacking? You're just creating these loops, is what they're called often, or questions that go unanswered until you get to a certain point. So while you're telling your story, you need to make sure you're delivering the answers to those. You've created these questions, but if you never give the answer, the audience gets bored. They get tired. They're going to leave. They get fatigued of being like, okay, is this guy ever going to get to the point? Is he actually going to answer these questions? Because if I'm not going to get the questions here, I'm not going to stick around. Or if I'm not going to get the answers to the questions, I'm not going to stick around. And that's totally understandable, right? We have finite time, and we really want to answer these questions that we have in our mind. It's in our nature. It's instinctual. But if we're not going to get those answers, we need to move on and solve something else. Find a new problem to solve, or be productive. So it's something that you can lead the people along through your story and pull them through and give them momentum as they progress through the story. But you need to be able to deliver at some point on some of those questions, hopefully little by little, creating tiny little cliffhangers so that they continue on to the next chapter and the next chapter or the next episode or the next video. So all of this is to say, curiosity is what drives audiences to consume your content. So if you're writing a book, make that first little bit enough to make them curious. Beyond that, make your title and cover something that makes them curious. And again, you don't have to state the questions, but you need to make it intriguing enough that they ask the questions in their own mind. Now, the final thing that I think is the best way, I just mentioned earlier, using little cliffhangers as you go along. So a lot of times we think of cliffhangers as like the end of an episode, right? You're watching TV, you get to a certain point, they've closed this story arc, and then they just barely crack open the next story arc. You get a little taste of what might happen, and then it shuts off and it just ends. And you go, oh no, now I have to wait till next week. Or if you're binging, I guess you could just start the next episode. But you're getting pulled into that next part of the story. That's the power of cliffhangers. So, how do you do a cliffhanger? Well,